Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second panel. We will talk about, how space tech companies can be built from 0 to 1 and beyond. Just to set the context, right? Today sort of sun is shining in the space sector with thanks to InSpace and a lot of efforts from the government. But the folks here on the panel actually started building their companies 5, 6 years back, where situation was very, very different. So we will sort of go into that part of the journey and see how things were there and what are the learnings from there and possibly connect to what we can do today, right? So that's what we will do, and we will try to wrap our discussion within 30, 35 minutes and leave some 10, 15 minutes for Q&A. So keep your questions ready, please. So with that, can I get started with a brief introduction about each one of you and what does your company do? Why do you exist?
Hello everyone, my name is Prateep Basu. I'm the founder of a company called SatSure, where we are an Earth intelligence company. Basically, that means we are essentially creating intelligence from all the data that satellites are beaming from low Earth orbit and transforming that for solving real problems on Earth. That's a bit, I think, yeah.
Hello, hi everyone. Good evening. My name is Srinath. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of this company called Agnikul. We build launch vehicles that take small satellites to space on demand. I'm looking at him because he's building a small satellite. So our concept here is to minimize and reduce the effort it takes to put small satellites in space. It feels like rockets that fly today have been built for satellites of the past, and we don't have efficient rockets to address today's satellites. So that's what we are building. Did our first launch, of course, with ISRO and InSpace's support earlier this year. That was successful. So yeah, looking at scaling and on to commercializing.
Hi, my name is Kshitij Khandelwal. I am CTO and founder at Pixxel. Pixxel is building a health monitor for planet Earth. So the idea is we build satellites with specialized payloads, cameras, that go up in space, take images of the Earth pretty much every day, and give information to people like Pradeep to essentially try to solve problems that plague the Earth, whether it's in agri, whether it's in energy, climate, pretty much all sorts of areas. So that's it.
Fantastic. I think we have all three aspects covered. One who can launch, one who can build a satellite, and one who can process the data. So amazing. So let's dial back and talk about how did you start, right? What was the 0 to 1/2 journey, if I can say that way, was like for you? Where did the idea come from? How did you start? Who were your early believers? Was there any pivot involved along the way? So maybe Pradeep, you can start. Oh, yeah, sure.
Well, among the three of us, I guess, our company is probably the oldest, 2017. Yeah. So when we started, it was more of there's so much of data explosion happening from satellites, but not enough applications being built. And obviously, everyone kept saying about potential, etc. The Bay Area people were raising, capital by showing climate change and agriculture, all kinds of vanilla flavored stuff, but no one was actually saying what's the real problem and how are we going to solve it. So we took that up because of maybe we are a product of this part of the world, so we can see inefficiencies everywhere and we can relate to, okay, this actually could be solved using this data. But obviously there was no precedent to it, and I was into consulting before, so I used to tell people what to do. So then some nice person told me that it's very easy to say and difficult to execute, so we quit our jobs and started. That's about it. Problems, I think we can discuss. They would have more problems than me.
So we started in December 2017 officially, at least that's when the company was incorporated, literally at the 7-year mark now, come to December. But I think at that time, Agnikul founding story was driven by me wanting to come back. I was in finance and wanted to come back into aerospace. I say back because all my life I was a space tech person. Took some steps to be more conservative, but then realized my heart is in space tech, so I should come back. So I just want to narrate one specific moment. So when I was in the US just before coming back, I was doing a lot of networking, trying to understand what's really happening in the industry. So I used to show up at all these meetups. So there was this guy from Europe who is now a potential customer, so I can't put a name out there. But he got a stroller, like what you take on, like a flight, and he opened it and he had a fully functional small satellite, and he just kept going on and on and on about why he's not able to get a launch to get this thing to orbit. According to him, it was a fully functional satellite. So there were those specific moments like this which made me clearly realize something is wrong with the launch. I didn't know what it was at that time. SpaceX was already launching. Of course, in India, 2016, we had that 104 satellite, a single launch, and just before that, we were also having the glory of the Martian mission and all that. So there was a lot happening here, a lot happening in space in US, but everyone seemed unhappy about getting to space. So there was one motivation. To be honest, I applied to SpaceX, I applied to Blue Origin, but I would like to think I didn't get selected because I'm an Indian citizen. Uh, not because of my other qualifications. So all those things were also making it very clear that India is a place to come and do it. So yeah, reached out to multiple professors across the country who will have labs where you can build rocket systems or test rocket systems. So one prof out of IIT Madras, Professor Satya Chakravarti, me and my other co-founder Moin were pitching to him, and he had 5 extra ideas on how else to build rockets. When we pitched 5, he pitched 5 more. So it's like, okay, I found the person who can support us for some time. So we moved back and started, and I think that was definitely a time when nothing was there. So it was all about passion and some belief that something can be done out of this and someone will buy it. I know that's not a great conversation for an investor. Right? Something can be done, someone will buy it, something is the TAM. But the technologies were still very original. So if you think of it as a rocket, we couldn't put a number or a TAM on it. But 3D printing as a technology or this kind of software as a technology, a lot of those things were still there. So we knew we were building something interesting, and one thing led to the other, and with the policy opening up, we are here today.
One question: how did the 3D printing idea came? It came before your meeting with the professor, or it came among those 10 ideas?
With the professor actually, because there was a project happening at IIT Madras where they were trying to build 3D printed jet engines. So Professor Satya's point was jet engines run for thousands of hours and thousands of cycles. No, whatever we do with the rocket, I don't think a rocket engine will go through so much. So he felt if you can do that for a jet engine, you can do this for a rocket engine. So that's where that idea started. But then we found SpaceX was already building 3D printed parts in their engine. Rocket Lab was using 3D printed parts. So once we started looking at that, we realized actually it is quite commonplace in the market.
Understood.
So we were quite fortunate that when Navesh and I we started Pixxel, we were still in our university. So we were extremely delusional, right, about how things work and how the world works. And we had been a part of some high-profile student projects in the university. So there was that confidence that yeah, we can raise some sponsorship, we can build something fun, maybe win a competition, or at least like end up being in the top 3, right? As a part of this brainstorming ideas in that direction, one day Wes comes to me and says, "Hey, what if we build satellites, put them around asteroids, start taking images? Because in few years, mining, heavy industry is going to be needed in space for human civilization in space." Obviously, you brainstorm all these random ideas in college, right? And I'm like, "हाँ करते हैं." So we started thinking of how we could, get to a point where we can build a stable, self-sustaining business that could get us there, because we're not, our names are not like Musk and Bezos, so we don't have the money to build something of that caliber in the first shot. And we said, okay, fine. The payloads, the cameras that are used for identification of minerals on asteroid, there was the moon orbiter that identified, traces of water and everything. So we realized that, there are these specialized payloads that can be built to identify minerals and basically map the surface chemistry of something. And we said, obviously, this can be built on the Earth. This can be used to image the Earth. And then we realized, okay, fine, there are a whole lot of problems that we need to solve around them. So we said, in our third year, we said, fine, summer May will take 2 months. We'll raise sponsorship again. We'll build a satellite. We'll launch it. Everything will be fine. None of that happened. And then we realized, okay, fine, this is how you really start going about, conceptualizing an idea. We started talking to a lot of people, VCs, angel investors, university alumni, heard a lot of no's. And then someone said, okay, fine, I'll fund your ticket to go so that you can pitch in San Francisco. And Aves had a US visa, so he took that opportunity, missed his midsems, and went there, final year. And that's when we got our first commitment, where someone said, yeah, fine, I'll put $25,000 into the company. As we started raising money, we started realizing that there were a lot of holes in our theory on how we would build a business around it. So with every piece of feedback that came, we started really talking to customers, potential users, people who worked with satellite data, worked with satellite imagery, people who built satellites before, ex-ISRO scientists, and started creating a more complete story. We were lucky that we got selected as a part of a Texas Accelerator in Los Angeles back in 2019. And that really helped us, speak with people that we had not, we never had the opportunity to speak to before. Like there's some director at NASA JPL who's been doing this all his life, or there's some person at Aerospace Corp who's been, building missions for the DoD for all her career. And they take you seriously. And that really changed it for us when people were taking us seriously. People were willing to discuss our idea. There was a lot of market validation that we got through the process. And that's kind of how we went ahead around creating a business. In fact, this is still an exercise in how to create a company. We're still experimenting. But things have been good, and yeah, that's been it.
On that point, right, of market validation, when you started, it was more of an inside out, right? You start building with your hypothesis and then you meet your first customer, potential customer. So just want to explore that topic, right? So how did you end up meeting your first potential customer? Did that dialogue change anything that you were building in terms of minor pivots or major pivots?
So for us, we had to actually break through in a market which did not exist, because we're creating the market here. So my first customer, the one we had, was you will not believe it. It's an asset management firm which was doing some text, NLP stuff, and wanted to fuse it with images. They were willing to pay us good money. On the first month after incorporating, I had a 100K thing. It funded our first 5 data scientists. So obviously we didn't, start the company to do NLP at that time. But I would say the first real customer that we had, again, matter of a few months, which was a crop insurance company at that time. And they had this massive problem of executing this public scheme called Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, where they had to use, like it was very vaguely worded in policy, use remote sensing, drones, etc. So they just wanted to trial what they could do. So my journey has been very much shaped by how the market has evolved. I was lucky to, let's say, get in touch with some of the people within the industry of, like, especially banks and insurance companies, who were also visionaries, who wanted to take that first bet. And very slowly our services got molded into a product thesis, and today we are one of the top, I would say, companies who is providing, enabling farm finance and insurance in the country. So yeah, it changes, and it was a random actually encounter with this person, crop insurance. Kshitij's story, actually, the key part was going to US. Mine was coming back from the US, and this guy was on the flight. So I came back from US and started SatSure, and he was on the flight. So that's how I knew him.
Interesting.
So customer story. So for us, actually, as I told you, right, I clearly saw there was a demand, there was a gap. People were struggling to launch. So I think that part of the story has always been the same. It's 7, 8 years, and since if you think ideation even before that, always a gap has been there. One thing that has continued to change is even before investors started asking us, because I met customers, that question was there about what is different in this rocket, right? And so the more we were trying to meet customers, and we showed up, there are like these some 10 events across the world that happen roughly once every month or so, where the entire community comes. You can pretty much meet anyone in SpaceTech if you show up in these events. And every time the same question was coming up. So it actually helped us fine tune what we are really, really solving for very early on, because that was driven by what customers wanted. Because the first thing, at least we realized is, a small rocket is not simply built by you taking a large rocket and shrinking it. Like, that is not how the economics would work. Maybe the technology would work, engineering would work, but pricing won't work. Customers will not like it. So those kind of insights were there. So I would say there was never a reason to pivot. The gap from that time still continues to exist, even though SpaceX has increased its launch cadence by 20x since then. But it has helped us fine tune what we are really building. So that has been the big interaction. And it has also generally been helpful to take customers through the journey, because some of the people we speak with, they have seen us from the time when we had only one small engine, which was not even a flyable engine, but just something for the ground, all the way till, some of them were watching our launch live when we were doing the launch. So that growth also gives them confidence. It's just like they are hearing about Agnikul all the time. So there is more of that faith to be built. So that's how customer conversations have benefited us.
For us, I think the market was pretty much available. So buying and selling of satellite imagery is not a new business. It's been happening for the last 30-ish years, if not more. And essentially what we were offering was a new modality of data. So with hyperspectral data, hyperspectral imaging is what we do. So with hyperspectral data, we essentially were looking at information that was 50 times more dense than any other existing information from space. And we were looking at providing it at the best possible resolution, the best possible revisit rate from those satellites. So we started talking to different customers who were using existing source of data. We tried to look at the applications, and we realized they were working with a lot of different data points, and their accuracies were not as good. I think at that point of time, just asking them, okay, fine, if you have this additional data set, would it make a difference? So we just initially started just cold reaching out to these people. Maybe 1 out of 10 responded, and we started building on top of that momentum. And as we were able to fundraise, we were able to go out there a little more. We had a bit more street cred to go and speak to the big customers, right? So we spoke to BP, we spoke to Rio Tinto, BP, British Petroleum. They don't like being called that anymore, but we spoke to all of these different big players in the energy segment. We spoke to a lot of big climate players, and really the exposure, they were kind enough to sit with us, talk about what they exactly want. And we tried to use that to fine tune essentially the spec on the satellites. So having that very direct connection with the biggest buyers helped us. And that's sort of market validation has been the journey.
One question on that one, right? We tend to get into this India kind of a tag, right? When you were selling, most of you have global customers. So did that play out in any way, positively or negatively? Being from India, selling globally, yeah.
Yeah, it takes some time. So, being from India, selling elsewhere, did it have a challenge? Is that the question? Okay. Not really. I think most customers today associate Indians as smart and can do AI. So the kind of work we were doing falls like at the core of it is AI and data. So somewhere the expectation was not that because you're from India so you have to be cheaper than the alternatives. I mean, at the risk of sounding obnoxious, I think the software services industry set a very bad precedent. I think the transformation of India as a software product nation has probably happened. The credit goes to those companies, which is why we didn't face at least that problem, I felt.
So I actually think it was positive only in a way, right? Because we were in some level still standing on the shoulders of ISRO and talking, and right, that was always there. I think even when I was not even formally, when it was again, Agnikul was not a company. Even then, people used to take me seriously in US just because I used to talk about some ISRO stories. They knew I was not associated with ISRO, but that respect was there. So um, I think within the space community, still that ISRO branding sort of extends to what India is building. So I think that way it has not been a negative at all.
I think I completely agree with both of them. India does have a very high volume of talent, right? And that played in our favor because here is talent that's ripe to get into a private industry, coming from giants like ISRO as well as other aerospace companies. A lot of EV companies were coming up at that time, so there was a very positive outlook around it. I think somewhere around 2016, 17, the global VC outlook also sort of turned very favorable towards Indian deep tech startups. And on top of that, just having that brand that, okay, fine, these are people who work with ISRO engineers, their reviewers are ex-ISRO scientists. They go have these conversations and get things vetted from ISRO, played a big role when we were going and selling to both investors as well as customers.
Fantastic. On the talent bit, right? So today, I think the scene may be different, but when you guys started, how did you build your initial team? What were the challenges? And then how did you scale it?
I think talent for him might be easier than for me. Uh, because you have a steady pool of aerospace engineers. You have, sorry, sir, ISRO, and you have all the ecosystem of ISRO, which has supported in launch vehicle development and all. But the kind of work that we are doing, maybe even I think Kshitij will have a similar problem here. It requires both specialist and generalist. Now, what we have today are like the talent pool is mostly consisting of specialists in AI, specialists in software, specialists in optical engineering design, etc. But you don't have deep generalists. Where will the product managers come from? Are the sales guys going to actually work if they can't speak, at least have some depth in explaining to the customer? So the business roles becomes quite difficult to hire. It was impossible to hire earlier, so it was all founder led in the early days. Today it is difficult, but at least we have figured how to scale the knowledge internally. But I think this is one thing which would be very important for the private space ecosystem to develop in India, that we would need to invest in the talent, like academic circles properly, and create training programs also, because we are literally creating new markets here. Even if you're replacing something in the existing market, you need a different like mindset of talent who come in.
So for us, the very very early years, because of the association with the IIT Madras ecosystem, that was easy. Easy in the sense it was easy to get people, but also it was all interns and that kind of people. So I used to spend a lot of time making sure the knowledge transfer used to be consistent. Otherwise, you're always going back some 2 months and again refiguring things out, right? So the very early years, like when we didn't have any money raised. After that, I think we have always tried to solve for people who have some liking for space, because in any space tech, particularly if you're building hardware, the kind of skill sets are very it's almost like every department of an engineering college you'll have to hire from, and every department of B school you'll have to hire from, because there is specialization required everywhere. So, and it's all anyway, you're creating things from scratch in some way. So, and there was no private sector as such here. So, we solve for people who like space, so that there is always that connect with the company to some level. And beyond that, it was about pairing them up with the right kind of retired SRO people. So, I think that is what has worked for us. And even today, I think the core engineering design team, they are still the people who, more than having tens of years of rocket building experience, they have tens of years of passion being, they know everything that SpaceX is doing today, even though they've not built the rocket. So that fresh thinking is always constantly there, right? And pairing that up with retired SRO people, I think, is the best way that has worked for us, because they will set the boundaries on what will not work, and then within that you have full freedom to experiment because you're not biased. In fact, I remember, I think Manish, you once told me, if you're an expert in an area, you end up getting a little biased against that area. So that's what people who have spent too much time in the industry bring. People who don't have that much experience, they are able to think more boldly, probably because they don't know what they're thinking of.
Like I said earlier, we were quite delusional when we started the company, and we found a bunch of others from our batch at BITS who were also just as crazy about it. So our founding engineers joined us from our batch, and space is such a beautiful concept for anyone. Like, it captivates a person's attention, and you always want to work in something that does not end up being mediocre. You want to work in something special, something that'll go beyond, our atmosphere and be there in space. And that's enough of motivation for anyone to start thinking about space as an industry that they want to work in. The moment you interview a electrical engineer in an EV company, or let's say you interview someone who's working at NVIDIA as an embedded engineer, and you tell them, hey, do you want to work on satellites, and would you like to build this? There's always going to be some interest. And I think we capitalized on that interest in the very beginning. We found the right people who were super interested in space but did not have the opportunity to get there. And those were our first few people. There were few people who were working on very passionate projects but did not have the right funding to do those. Some people were team-indus at the time. They decided to join the company. So I think a lot of it has been just finding people who are superbly motivated by the challenge of space, who love working on challenges. And you will always find people like that, because everyone wants to work on something impressive in their lifetime.
Sure. Maybe we'll shift our gears to funding and we'll change roles. All right. So I'm assuming that funding has not been an easy journey for any one of you, especially in the times you raised. Right now, things may be different, and everybody would have looked at your business and thought about it certain way, and you would have said, "Oh, why are they looking at it this way? They should have looked this way." So maybe some anecdotal thing about when you were pitching, what what is it that if you were a VC evaluating your own business, how would you look?
I like the fact that you're looking at me while asking this question. Ideally, Kshitij should answer that. He has raised the most money. But let me take a dab at it and maybe Kshitij can add. So, I raised the first round after 4 years of bootstrapping and reaching a ARR of $1.5 million and 50 people. So the first and foremost thing for me was that don't raise. But when we did go out to raise, it was on much more favorable terms than any other first round of contemporary companies. And for that, my pitch was this: 3 T's. I have a good team, our tech is great, and my TAM is huge. So a combination of my team and tech helps me to also navigate around the policy risk questions that investors would have. The way in which we crawled through the first 4 years gave the confidence that these guys can build a company reaching that TAM in a more capital efficient way than others. And those were the only markers that I guess our first round was based on. Obviously, beyond that, Series A and now pre-Series B, etc., we had definitive financial metrics, which most space tech startups don't have. But even in those conditions, I feel this strategy always works: team, TAM, and tech.
3 T's. Okay.
3 T's.
All right.
So if I were a VC looking at Agnikul, it's a very difficult question to answer. So I think I would go with the founding team directly. So this is me talking about me then. But I think the fact that both me and my other co-founder Moin, we left something and came back, that would still attract me as a VC. The fact that we had IIT Madras, a professor from there helping us quite a bit, that would help. having the right kind of ISRO people. So I think that is where, because I'm assuming that if I'm a VC, then I won't know as much about the gap in the launch vehicle market and so on, right? So I would see that team and get started with at least the early years. I also think if for example, say I'm going and trying to invest in a small, space tech company or something, I would literally only solve for the same part about how serious is the founding team about getting it there, because it's going to be a hard journey. I think even in the last panel they spoke about it. Is there enough passion to go through the ups and downs?
I feel that disconnect always remains, right, irrespective of the stage. So what you feel your investor should see and what the investor sees in you. So that was the initial days. What is the disconnect you're facing now?
Now I think it's more like, because the tech works, there is a TAM. So we feel that part of it, because I'm still struggling to communicate sometimes why, even though we have not put something in orbit, already all the tech works. And I wish people hearing it understood it easier. Now we are able to do it, but it takes 2-3 conversations. So that is only the gap.
Understood. Kshitij?
I think just looking from the lens of a venture capitalist trying to invest in Pixxel, the first thing that, we've spoken to our investors about this a lot. Why did you invest in us? What made you do this? I think the ability to problem solve is probably a paramount, because you need people who can figure out solutions to problems. You know it's not an easy industry. You know it's not an easy market to crack. You know it's not easy technology to build or an easy team to hire. But are these people the right people to solve these problems? And can they find out unique solutions, innovative solutions, or at least like quick fixes to do it? Second is, I think, just the strength within the team itself, because I mean, this is common for whether it's a SaaS company or a space company. What's common is co-founder conflict, breaking companies, and how do they resolve conflict? How easy are they with each other is something that matters. So pretty much the same principles actually that apply to any other company, but for space, just a bit more patient investing, where you want to understand that, okay, fine, 4 years down the line, 5 years down the line, will these people be interested in this? Does this mean everything to them? Everything might be a bit too much, but does this mean a lot to them, right? Are they super serious about it? Because you don't want people who want to sell their company in 4, 5 years, 6 years. You want people who will stay long, 10, 15, 20 years, that type of thing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Let me open the floor now. We are coming to a closure of the panel. Any questions? Yes, lot of hands. Okay. Let me start with the back. Yes, yourself, sir. Yes, please. Do we have mics or would you? All right, you have mics. Okay, cool.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for this session. My name is Nikhil. My question to you guys is, considering the fact that space tech operates in a very critical domain, which is integral to national security and global infrastructure, what is the approach that the space tech in India today takes towards cybersecurity? And considering the fact that majority of the attacks usually come from state-sponsored attacks or very big players trying to attack. So what is the approach usually taken? How do you secure your ground stations or your satellites or your communication channels?
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
we pretty much work in all of those areas. But basically, you are in the grayest of gray areas with space, and it is dual use. You don't want to compromise on cybersecurity at any front. So everything is encrypted. Obviously, how you connect, how you communicate with your satellites is encrypted. How the data comes down is encrypted. How it's shared with people is encrypted. You ensure that there is a very few number of people who are authorized to operate. If they're authorized to operate, the keys of the operation, the telemetry, telecommand list, pretty much security and precaution at every level is the name of the game. Half of the time, vulnerabilities come because of people mistakes than the lack of security measures. So just training the team to operate in the right way is also very important. And then you also work with a lot of third-party contractors, whether it's ground stations or whether it's someone providing a certain service So just ensuring that there is some form of penetration testing happening once in a while, just an audit happening once in a while is quite important. It is paramount to ensuring that you have a secure chain, because at a lot of times you also work with defense agencies, governments who want this data, and their identity security is very important.
I think
Thank
we
you
have
so
many more hands. So can you keep your question short, and maybe we'll keep the
Yeah.
answer also short so that we can take as many as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, hi. My name is Madhu and I work as a talent advisor with startups. My question is, what have challenges and learnings as you scale your teams, hiring specialized talent in your growth phase?
Who wants to take that?
So I think good talent is always hard. Early phase, late phase, growth phase. So we solve for attitude, we solve for passion for space, we solve for sincerity and hard work. The rest of it anyway has to be learned on the job. I think in all our cases there is that part we'll have to figure out. So solve for the right people from the attitude standpoint, skill and talent. We can, even if there's a gap early on, we can work on that. The reverse of that is not true. So that's what we basically solve for. There are enough people who do the basic engineering, so just solve for the attitude.
Yes. And people who are helping with the mic, just spot the next person as well. So that will be helpful. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Hey, I'm Sayantan. Basically, two questions. Just trying to summarize it quickly. One is and especially this is to Khitesh because this is specific to you only. I mean, because we are having a lot of space debris now with more satellites coming. Probably just taking a highway as an example, giving a good road is a government's responsibility. Whose responsibility is it to clear the debris? And if it is not a private organizations, then will venture would ever move in there in that space. That's one. Second thing being, largely to you, Srikanth, but then generally again, look, a lot of small satellites are getting launched these days. Now, while as you said, that like the old way of launching the launch vehicles would not work out, why is the growth of multi-orbital launch vehicles not so much happening, let's say, in this sector of the world? What are the challenges that we are facing over there?
So two questions. One is space debris and other is multi-orbital launch.
So answer to first one is simple. It's Arun's responsibility to clear out satellites. But no, like you said, right, there are cars on a road, and you won't, once your work with the car is done, you won't just leave it on the road and go home. You will, move it to the side and stop in a parking lot or something like that. So in space, there are either parking orbits if you're in geostationary orbits, or you just ensure that you deorbit it. To put it simply, it's your own responsibility. If you're building the satellite, make sure you can bring it down. And pretty much every company at this point of time has to take those measures, not just by like pure goodness of their heart, but because the regulators ensure that, if you have to launch a satellite, you have to create a clear plan of how you'll bring it down. There's basically a lot of good, healthy policing happening in that area.
Multi-orbital vehicles, I think just the way the rocket equation works, it's hard to change inclinations in orbit. So maybe you can try different altitudes, and that people are doing. But when small rockets, even that gets harder, right? So there is a fundamental conflict. You big rockets, they can maybe give more flexibility in altitude, but no rocket can give flexibility in inclination. That just engineering doesn't work. With small rockets, even that gets harder to make it economical. It's possible, but then you'll have to figure out a trick on how to keep it inexpensive and still do it. So it's actually not, if you solve for one, it'll blow up on the other one. So that's why you're not seeing too many success stories there.
So that's an idea to someone to build a company in. Next question. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I think I want to ask with the Agnikul. Yeah. So the question is more on the sense of debris from, let's say, the launch cadence of micro launchers, right? So are you thinking about reusability in the future? Because I know you're a liquid propulsion kind of company. So I think that is more to your forte. And what is your thought process on the debris created from the launch cadence of a rocket like yours?
So I'll divide it into two: ocean debris and space debris. We will try to recover the booster. I don't know when exactly, or I don't know if I can comment on that too much now. But yes, that's a part of the story. That's one of the advantages of liquids. Space debris, the upper stage, I think we all should be responsible and use that last 2% to kick ourselves out. The good part of a small rocket is it'll burn up, or there are other ways to also put it to use. So, yeah, we're very conscious of the debris part to answer your question. We'll do enough to make sure both parts of the rocket don't end up becoming debris.
We can take one more. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Hi, this is for Srinath. Srinath, you must be knowing in the UK, Orbix can launch their satellites from Sutherland or Virgin from Saxonwood. Are you thinking of having your own spaceport? And alternatively, if you were to have an opportunity to launch from UK, how open are you for that? And what do you think would be the restrictions or policy changes that might be needed? And hence, my question to the previous panel, is Indian, space force in the table who are dictating the international laws? So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, in some small way, we have a spaceport already within Sriharikota, right? But the question is very interesting because when you solve for launch pricing, the second biggest variable after the mass to orbit is whether Earth's rotation is helping you or hurting you. So it's very important to solve for latitude. The big challenge with India at a geography level, not at a country level, is it is equatorial. So there are only so many launch sites available. So it's very important to at least have the ability to go outside. From a design standpoint, you can solve for it by building vehicles and launch pads that are easily exportable or at least transportable. So we are doing that. The vehicle can go anywhere. Now, whether the paperwork will come up at the right time for that, we will see. We are talking to other people. There are certain governments which are super, excited in getting Indian players to come outside or any other players to come outside. So we'll talk to them and see. But at least the next 10 launches probably will be from India. So at least for Agnikul.
The UK's weather, I don't know how much window you will have to launch from there.
British Virgin Islands.
I think we are over time, so we'll wrap it up. Thank you, Pradeep, Srinath, and Kshitij for sharing your insights. Thank you and all the best.
Thank you.